Welcome to Growing the Region, a podcast brought to you by Recycled Media that spotlights inspiring stories of resilience, leadership, and triumph within the blue-collar economy. Meet your host, Jake Bronstein. He's not just passionate, he's on a mission to unearth the invaluable lessons learned from the unsung heroes of the blue-collar economy. With a track record that includes founding a recycling company and acquiring another, Jake knows firsthand the challenges faced by entrepreneurs who have weathered the storms. Prepare yourself for a deep dive into the wisdom of accomplished operators as we uncover the invaluable lessons that have paved the way for their remarkable success stories.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for having me. I'm here with J. Keating, Bobby Coy, and Dean Darby from the Stone Transport Group. Thank you guys for having us here today. What I want to get into is Dean, you had a really interesting story I think should be told. I want to get started about, where you started from, because it was a humble beginning.
Oh, yeah. I grew up in a small town, central Michigan. We had a family farm, and so at a pretty young age I was helping my dad. My younger brother was pretty involved in that as well. And that's where I had my first experience.
In the trucking business and transport?
We were more, driving the tractor to the town with wagons of corn or whatever, right? But,
right.
Yeah, we were hauling things.
How big was the farm?
It was small.
Yeah.
It was small. My dad worked full-time and farmed, so.
Wow. What did your dad do?
He worked at Dow Corning in Midland.
Okay.
So.
And so you grew up there. How many siblings did you have?
6 siblings.
Wow.
So I have 4 sisters and 2 brothers.
Okay. And where are you in line?
I'm
with
the
your
oldest.
Oldest?
Yeah.
And you went off from there and you went to Central Michigan, right?
Correct.
You played a little ball there?
Yep, long time ago.
What position did you play?
I played offensive tackle. Yeah, the glory days, right?
Right. And what did you do? So how did you get started in the trucking business?
So my first job was in the oil field selling. I wasn't selling. I was more of a delivery driver, learning the business on the rotary drill bits for Smith Tool.
Okay.
And then didn't do that for very long, and I had an opportunity to join Consolidated Freightways, who was a big nationwide less than truckload carrier, and went through a great training program and spent almost 5 years with them.
Okay.
And joined Stone Transport, which was in 1989. It was I think we had, let's call it 20 trucks on the road, and basically we went from mid-Michigan, Saginaw, Flint, to the mills in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And then at that time, GM had a foundry in Saginaw, so then our backhaul was scrapped back to the foundry.
Gotcha.
And so it was, that foundry closed, and so necessity is the mother of invention. We started to branch out and kind of grew it from there.
But you started as a driver, so how did you work your way up?
Well, I never drove for a living.
Okay.
I drove.
Okay.
In the LTL business, I started out with a small terminal, so
okay.
Occasionally I would jump in, and I was never had a CDL or.
Okay. But you had a pretty humble beginning at Stone Transport when you first started. Like, what was your day to day?
Well, I came in. It was the company was pretty successful at that time. It was, right. But small,
right?
And there was not. It had a poor audit on safety, and mm-hmm. Not that it was not safe. They just didn't do good record keeping, and so. Putting in some of those systems from my experience at CF, and then dispatched and did sales. But the only thing I didn't touch, the owner at that time, who became my partner, Bob Hickey. Bob was a mechanic originally.
Okay.
So he took care of the maintenance and certainly kept his eye on me when we first got started.
and so as you progressed. And so Bob owned 100%, but as you accelerated within the company and you grew.
Yeah, when I came aboard, Bob was really looking for an exit, and our deal was if it works for the first year, then he'd sell 10% a year for 5 years, and then we'd figure out how to do the last 50%. And we actually grew the business significantly in the first 3 years, where it was hard to afford more stock. So we stayed at that 70-30 for, it took 15 years to get that. And by that time we were, first it was 50 trucks and then 100 and then 200. And so at the end of 2004, which I guess is 16 years, we were able to finally get that deal done.
When you came into the business, what other peers within your group, other companies did you look at and you're like, I want to be like them?
At that time, there was Savage in Salt Lake City was like a $80 million trucking company. Now they're a $2 billion company, a huge success story. And it was like, and Jack Gray was, they did a lot of the garbage hauling. And I mean, so those were, those two companies were in the $80 million range. We were at 4. And then the Carrier in St. Louis, they're still out there, a real nice company. Can't remember their name right now, but they were in that 40 million, and I think they're bigger now too.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Gray, even down in our area, still does a lot of freight. Obviously, too, I mean, they're still big into the transfer trailers and in that line of business. An impressive operation.
Yeah, those were, old line companies that had been really successful for 20 some years at that point.
I just know, coming from like my background, where I see other people's trucks on the road and their operations, it's like something to reach towards. And I like, being 3 years into it, it's like, I know it's 1 year at a time, but I think probably you were itching too, or it's like, how do I just get there?
Oh, for sure. Then there were some other nice companies that were pretty successful that are no longer around, and they were, by the perseverance of their owner, and then their owner, either they sold or it divested, or it fell in hard times. So there's been a lot of significant companies that were at one time models to look at.
No, I think it's important, and like obviously to see the success of others and like the strategies, and like, Bobby, you've done a great job of, leading Stone Transport and like the next evolution, which we'll get into their strategy. And then Jay, your perspective of kind of coming in from the outside corporate world and bringing in your leadership, your methodology, your utilization, and then how all you guys work together, because it's quite different than when you first started.
Very much so. Yeah. Glad to have him. Trust me.
I mean, and how important do you think, with your partner, Mr. Hicks, and how important is mentorship here?
It was very important. I think about, and we were aligned on, some of the how we went about business. He had that conversation, things we do, things we don't do, and we were aligned on that, and that continues to today.
Yeah.
But Bob was always looking for an exit.
Right.
And we kept growing the business, and that became a challenge, and he really wanted to do other things, and that took him almost to basically retirement. So he didn't get to do a lot of other things.
Yeah. No, it's all right, but I mean, I think the interesting part is like you went from a $4 million company up to a company that has 225. How many trucks do you have?
225 rolling trucks. Yeah.
Wow. And what's the revenue level?
We're 60 million on the trucking side.
It's pretty incredible. Was there a day where you sat there and you're like, I've done a good job? I'm like somewhat proud of myself for what.
Yeah, and not necessarily just myself. It
Right.
was, but yeah, a lot of pride in the business and
Yeah.
the people, and what we do every day, we're pretty good at, and so we celebrate those successes. And today, if you would have told me even some of the things that we're doing and capable and almost do it, I wouldn't call it effortlessly, but it doesn't look that hard. Yeah, there's a lot of pride in that.
Yeah, I think that the talent pool is what we were talking about to develop culture. And obviously, Bobby, you came into the business how many years ago?
11 years ago into stone transport. So
How have you seen it evolve, and since you came into the business?
we grew geographically, right? When I came in, it was a big focus on. There was a lot of Michigan-based work, a little bit into Ohio, Indiana, with some dedicated accounts, but we were able to grow geographically, but also lean on current customers to provide new services, provide new lanes. We were kind of it seemed like we were just in a kind of like a holding pattern when I first came in, and we were able to talk with some new customers, build deeper base with current customers.
Yeah.
This terminal that we have here in Detroit, if you'd see when I first came in, it was down the road here. It was a 2-bay garage with a tree growing on top of the roof, right? And we were just like, we got to get it back out there and really hit the pavement, talk to some of our customers, deepen our relationships with them, make new ones, open up new lanes, capabilities. And it was a team effort. I mean, Dean had great, contacts and people to knock on the door that were the higher ups. His relationships when I first came in were the people that making big decisions, and some of our customers that we service every day. So it allowed that open door for me to go in and just start talking with them and start chatting with them, and some of our sales team to get in there and just start talking with them and chatting with them and growing the business. There were some good things and some bad things. I mean, I'd say if you look at some of the bad stuff, I mean, we were out in Minnesota. I mean, that was an amazing opportunity. We were running 35 trucks back and forth 24 hours a day, 7 days a week up in the Iron Mountain Range. And all of a sudden, just like that, one day we get a call, hey, we're done. Okay. So now you have to pivot and figure out, okay, well, we got a bunch of side dumps and we got a bunch of day cabs up there. What the heck do we do with it? So, that's just going back to leaning on your customers that you currently have and starting to figure out, okay, how can we utilize our equipment? And that type of stuff helped us grow geographically. Now we're in Texas. We have dedicated accounts in Texas, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama. So we really, from when I first came on to where we're at now, that footprint has grown, and we've diversified what we haul. We were a lot integrated with just hauling scrap, and we've shifted that. We still do a lot of scrap, and we love doing scrap. We do a lot of aggregates. We love doing aggregates. We do deck freight now. Our roll-off fleet has grown a little bit. So we diversified, we grew geographically and diversified what we actually do as well. We service more industries now than what we did when I first came in.
Yeah, I think, it's always hard when you're so dependent upon a cyclical industry such as scrap metal and obviously being aware of the cycles. And it's tough obviously for you guys, but because you're doing more aggregate, you still have that room to fill capacity. You're not dependent upon vendors such as myself that might be a little greedy 1 month and say, you know what, I'm not selling, right? Or I'm not moving this.
Yeah.
And
how what we hate is the market turnover.
Right.
we love hearing TBDs with you guys. Like we're like, all right, scrap TBD. That means we can just keep going, right? And no, I mean, there's literally how that scrap market, how the scrap market works for a lot of scrap processors is you have the first week off. Right. And then you have 3 weeks to shove as much as you can down if it's the good market, right?
Right, yeah.
So, we had to diversify. Like, what are we supposed to do with X amount of trucks in the first 10 business days of the month trying to figure out what the scrap price is going to be? We had to. Like, you have to. You can't have your assets only making money for half the month sometimes.
Right.
So, by diversifying, building deeper relationships, new relationships, it allows us to float, right? It allows us to float when those markets take that tumble. I mean, we still feel it a little bit, but right. if we're talking February and it's freezing cold here in Michigan, yeah, we feel a little bit.
Yeah, is that what led into Stone Material Handling, and how did that business come to light?
So we bought a trucking company in Ontario in the late 90s, and one of the relationships we had over there asked us if we knew anything about the slag market in Michigan, which we knew. Just we hauled it. We didn't know it, and we put together a joint venture with this group in Ontario and started a company, Canadian Slag Services, which is still operating today at Stelco in Nanticoke, Ontario. That was a lot of fun for a number of years. I sold that at 2009, my share of that. One of the partners in that business, Russ Cameron, who owned Waterford, he was an aggregate producer and then did a lot of work in the steel mills. And he was in the material handling business. So then we brought his expertise over here in 2004, started to load vessels, screen material. We did reclaim projects around the U.S. Similar to what he did in Ontario. And when in 2009, we kind of went to our respective countries. He kept the Canadian. We had a small stone material handling in Ontario, and plus he had his larger company there. And we also had, he was partners in our oil and gas well service company. And so that's how we started that. We started it together, so he was another mentor.
Right.
20 years older than me and had a lot of experience, and we were great friends, and it worked out well.
And it kind of leads me into the next thing I wanted to talk about was 08, 09. What did that look like for you guys in the transportation business? So
the 08 wasn't bad.
Right.
We were hearing it, in October, get ready, this is going to be bad. And we were proactive on making some reductions in overhead. And so we hit 2009, and we lost money the first 5 months like it was our job. I mean, it was pretty scary. And the trucking company didn't have a good year. We did pick it back up in the second half, but we would have lost money. The well service company actually made some money that year. And so on the whole, we eked out a little bit in the black. And but it wasn't a time to grow. It was a time
conserve.
We had to, and
right.
I remember the conversation with our bank at the time was like, "You guys are the least of our worries. Just keep making your payments, but there's no new money, right? Don't think about buying anything." And that lasted really through most of 2010.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you guys have been through some weird cycles. 2015. When the commodity markets declined significantly, and obviously COVID in 2020, what did that look like for you guys? Jay, were you here yet?
It was just right before. I got to see the tail end of it, which was definitely exciting because it was an opportunity to really put our assets to work. I think Bobby can speak more towards it, but
yeah, I mean it was uncertainty. right? I mean,
Yeah.
it probably is the word that rounds it out. We were
Right.
completely uncertain, like what are we able to do? What are we not able to do? And then obviously the government stepping in and handing out money and once we realized what that was and how best to utilize it, it allowed us to continue to operate and provide support. We necessarily didn't really slow down at all. We didn't grow, but we didn't slow down, right? We kind of maintained. But if it weren't for the government injecting itself in and helping out companies like ours that are crucial to several businesses, major industries.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been bad, but we were able to float through it, and come out better on the other end.
I think the one thing, because I opened my business in March of 2020, and it was pretty fortuitous timing.
Right.
Yeah, kind of like Dean in '09, and we were hemorrhaging money, and we had to do a couple capital calls, and we I just remember thinking to myself, like, am I going to make it through? Just. But when it turned, they started pumping money into the economy, and prices and inflation went through the roof. But I think the most challenging thing for me, and I don't know what it was for you, was I think labor and capacity. All of a sudden we had this new capacity coming on, flows increased, but I could not get enough people. And transportation was so difficult. It was so difficult to move product and to get it to market. Because, I mean, obviously you guys too were struggling just to put, asses in seats.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely. I feel like we're starting to see a plateau of it.
Right.
And I think what drove that was people were paid to be at home.
Yeah.
That's never a good thing. People were paid to be at home and not be productive. That was a driving force. Virtual jobs became more prevalent.
Yeah.
So it was tough. It was like, okay, I can go be in a truck or be a mechanic or be an office person and come to the office. We would have a tough time being virtual. The way the operations team works, it would be very challenging to do it virtually. And you had all those outside forces that it was like, well, why come in? Why go to Stone? Why go in my truck? I can sit at home and work virtually. I got enough tech skills that I can sit home and do this, or I can just sit home and do nothing too. So it was crazy. And one thing that we kind of had going back to like how crazy that time was, it was 15 where the commodities did take a major dip, and we felt that because we weren't totally diversified then. Like I didn't feel like we were on the cusp of it, but we weren't totally where we wanted to be. And then we had a GM strike. That was brutal. I mean, we support a lot of dedicated operations, and obviously the commodities market, especially the metals market, is driven by what the autos is really. A lot of it is driven by what the autos are doing, right? The major auto manufacturers are doing. So we had 15 big GM strike, plant shut down. We provide a lot of dedicated service. Obviously, scrap processors are feeling that as well because prices are going all over the place. They're not taking what they want. And then right after that, it was COVID. It was like this bam, 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 and I mean it was some testy times, that's for sure.
Yeah, the workforce and our employees are they're good, right? So they had a lot of opportunities coming out of COVID, and we had drivers that had opportunities to go work in construction and be home more, and where typically they may not have made as much doing that. Mm-hmm. Well, now they were making as much or more because and everybody could chase these increasing wages, which is good for everybody if you can keep up with the rates and the increases. But it was an opportunity for them to try different things, or to become an owner operator because the markets were crazy for
Free
the
markets
rates.
were insane.
Right.
Yeah,
Just the
we had
rates.
several drivers that was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna chase load boards. I'm getting my own truck.
Yeah.
See ya.
Which good for them.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
we certainly and some of those folks are back,
Right.
and they did really well the market, and but it was there was a lot of opportunities for good people,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sometimes it was time to try something new,
Yeah.
and it was hard to build that workforce back up for sure.
Yeah, I just remember like getting quoted lanes and just how hard it was as a shipper to move product, and it forced us to invest in our own capacity, our own trailers, just because I'd never wanted to be in that position ever again.
Yeah.
One of the things that really affected us is that we had a recycler, General Iron Industries, that was supposed to move a little bit south, that was bought by Reserve Management Group, and they, typically throughout my career, they provided the trucking for sheet iron and clean sheet. It became such a pain in the ass to move clean sheet and sheet iron to get our loads picked up, and I was just like, screw it. My own trucks, trailers, I'm not going to be dependent upon it. But to your point, I just remember people like we would have new hires that literally worked for like 3 hours, and they were like, nope, I'm gone. Or just people showing up for interviews. It was so hard to attract labor, and it was the most frustrating thing for me, and maybe you guys can relate, was like, I have this capacity, but I can't fill it. Like I could not get enough people at a certain point because the volumes were so substantial and the demand to really operate efficiently. And I think you guys being ops guys, it killed me. It was so frustrating because you have everything in place and there's nothing you can do.
Well, that's what we had to do. We had to adapt. I mean, when I first came out with Stone, we probably had, we kind of had safety and recruiting grouped into one department, and they were, part safety, a little bit of recruiting. And as time has gone on, now it has morphed into a recruiting and retention department in and of itself. You have to, especially for us, where you may turn over your entire driver, your entire driver count may turn over in one calendar year.
Yeah.
That's how crazy it is. Like we will, we have 222 drivers right now, and drivers and plant operators, and in 1 year we'll probably turn 200. We'll probably lose 220 drivers. It's just part of the nature of it.
And I mean that's the new normal. And I was asking Jay about that on the car ride up yesterday, of just like what the retention rate looks like. And I think one of the things that he's been focusing on, that he's told me, is culture, right? Making sure that you guys, from a leadership perspective, communicate to your employees that you care about them, right? You care about what they have to say, you care about their safety, you care about their equipment, you care about what their thoughts are upon the future, and vice versa.
Yeah, well, fortunately, that turnover happens at the margin. I mean, we have a very stable, pretty loyal workforce that I don't know if it's 60% or where that, or 70% of our people like it there, and they stick with us, so we like them. I mean, it's a good culture, and but as you're trying to grow, and or remote locations, and it's new, you're establishing that, and so I think a lot of that turnover happens at the margins. It's the 3-hour employee, right?
Right, exactly.
Or they're there for a couple weeks, and it's just not for them.
And we've really seen our, that retention, your loss of drivers or maintenance staff. We've really seen that take a nosedive. It's like I said, it's really
Stabilized.
It has stabilized to where, in 1 week we're losing 2, 3, 4 people at a time, and now it's becoming more rare. So that means what you know what you're talking about with Jay and myself is that culture push and you know, creating that for all of our employees. It's such an important piece of a business.
Yeah, I think so too. One of the things that after talking to you guys, it seems that like you guys have really looked at your history and have learned from it, you know, and history repeats itself. So there's going to be another cycle. There'll be another 2015. But as you alluded to, you know, the shift to aggregates has really kind of stabilized that cash flow, right? So, you know, on a week-to-week basis or whatever that capacity looks like, what do you say to the other guys that are kind of going through the same thing right now? Because obviously the freight market is not good right now. If you're doing dry van or reefer or flatbed, it's the convergence between spot and contractual. What do you have to say to these guys right now that are like on the precipice, you know, and the owner-operator, it's like to go down that rabbit hole and to build out some type of horizontal or vertical that makes sense?
Well, for owner operators, we'll take owner operators all day long. So if you're out there, yeah, you can give us a shout. I don't know as far as somebody that's in that market. I just know what's worked for us. You got to lean on your core customers. You got to know your customers. You got to lean on them. You got to always be continually talking with them. What is it? The 80-20 rule, like 80% of your revenue is really probably made up by 20% of your customers, right?
Sure.
So you really need to be focusing on that 20, understand what they need and how can you provide other services, because what we found is, you know, our 20%, which is a lot. Like we have a lot of really good people that we work with. We're only scraping the surface with some of them. Like there's so much more that we can do for them, and I think that's probably pretty. You know, if some of these people that may be struggling, look at your customers, get to know them, and really start to understand. Okay, I'm doing deck freight for them. I'm doing van, but like, what else do they have? Like, is there anything else I can do for them? Do they do this? Do they do that? Come with a solution to a problem. Come with capacity. Mm-hmm. Worst thing they can do is say no.
Right.
Yeah, we haven't been the spot market. I mean, we use it for on our flatbed or van side as little as possible, and but service matters, and if you're contractual, we're pretty, we fulfill our obligations, and that means taking the bad with the good sometimes.
Yeah.
And but if it's transactional, it's a spot market, and it's bad, you're really not getting a benefit of sucking it up and doing that for somebody.
Right.
Where our customers, not everything works, and not every day's a great day, but on the average, we look for a high average.
Yeah, you know, and I always joke with Jay, because I know his day is probably worse than mine, because nothing ever goes right within trucking. But, you know, going back to servicing your customers and understanding what their needs are, I know you guys have entered into new markets, right, as new steel capacity has come online. Southeast, Texas, especially as, you know, these vertical integration plays and capturing product, you know, scrap that these plants want to aggregate and collect for their steel manufacturing process. I think it's you know, having those reoccurring revenue streams and like these what I call them like an anchor tenant is probably pretty critical in order to develop critical mass and going into new markets. I mean, it's really interesting to see your guys' strategy, you know, particularly in the Southeast and to Texas, which is a huge manufacturing hub and probably going to have increased capacity there. What has that been like for you guys to, you know, getting that set up? I mean, there wasn't any infrastructure there or people or trucks. It's
a team effort.
Right.
I mean, Jay, you can probably speak well to that.
I mean, I think we talked a little bit about it, but it's a partnership with good companies or good customers that we really pour into, and they in turn pour back into us. We gave us a shot down south, and it started small. We were at 5 trucks, and that allowed us to get to the critical mass where we have a shop in place, and we have 22 trucks running out of there, OTR fleets, building a base. But it was really the knowing our customers and our sales team, Mike Strelecki reaching out to build those relationships that they were able to tag us along down south. So
yeah, we've always kind of operated under the assumption, just plant the seed and it'll grow, right? Mm-hmm. So we've planted a lot of seeds. Sometimes they've died. Sometimes they never sprouted. But that's kind of Dean. Obviously, that's that entrepreneurial spirit. Not everything's gonna go right. Not everything's gonna take. Learn from it. Try it again. And that's in my tenure here. That's kind of what it's been. Let's do your best, make a good, educated decision.
Right.
Try it. You got to know when to stop, though.
Sure.
Like, you've got to know when to just be like, all right, I'm folding, I'm out.
Right.
And we've learned that the hard way. But it's also bred some really great things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm sure you guys have opened up terminals before and have tried things, and it just didn't work out. You have the right people in place, the right assets, or timing, and that's just part of it, right? That's part of swinging the bat.
Well, and your customer can have a change in their operation,
right,
and we're no longer relevant. The relationship could still be just fine, but if they close a plant or exit a business in that location, that's it. And especially if it's new or it's in a remote area, there's not really other things to fall back on.
I think that goes back to the diversification. I mean, you guys have 3 different business units. Specifically on the Stone Well Services, you guys have made recent acquisitions to grow that. What does that look like for you guys? It's pretty interesting that, I think most people think about Stone, and Stone is just a transport side and maybe the material handling side, but I think Well Services is like the sleeping beast.
It's a similar size company, maybe a little larger on revenue than Stone Transport, and it's a business that we started with 1 rig at the end of 2004, beginning of 2005, and we'd have a similar number of employees, almost 300 in that business now. And with this, we'll call it a merger. 2 of the existing shareholders from the company are still part of the shareholder group, and our longtime CFO and was the president of the overall companies, Steve Anderson, is the president and running that business. And it's right now the commodities. Natural gas could be higher, but there's still pretty good activity for us, and it's similar to trucking, a lot of CapEx.
Yeah.
And the workforce, the culture's different, but similar. Good hard workers and some talented people that know what they're doing. It's we're operating below ground.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think just the industry-specific knowledge and obviously the geology, but also it's really operationally intensive. I mean, earlier on in your career, you alluded to getting products and resources out to these oil fields and understanding the logistics that go into it. I kind of remember when oil went through the roof and everyone was drilling in like the Bakken Basin, and just how much truck, the headline was like how much truck drivers were making delivering water, sand, and basic staples in order to operate. It's such a logistically intensive business.
Yeah, we played in it, and it was one of those learning experiences. I don't know if I say that we won't do it again, but who knows? I'm not gonna. But it was one of those that burned us. Like, we were in it. We were ramped up. We were delivering down in Texas, doing some. It was great, and then all of a sudden it was just like, faucet turned off, things changed, you're done, and
that's the commodities business, man.
It's the commodities business, unfortunately.
You know, you just have these cycles, and Inland Wall Street kind of changes the scope, and they're, you know, hey, you know, let's focus on shareholder returns. Let's you know, revitalize these wells. Let's kind of rein in some capex. Let's return money, and you know, let's cash flow, and let's make some distributions. But I think the cool part about this business, just in general, is connecting with, you know, vendors and the service side, and for different opportunities to come up. Particularly, we were talking, and there's, you know, I learned about Stone Well Services, and we have a project that's going on, and there might be some overlap there. But I think really at the end of the day, is there's like the relationships, and there's people that you like to work with. Like, me personally, I like working with you guys because I trust you guys, right? I mean, maybe we'll miss a truck, or, you know, or it won't show up because we blow a steer, but it's always made up. I mean, there's always communication on the back end. Like, Jake, sorry, we screwed up, but we'll get you first thing tomorrow morning. Or going to Cleveland Cliffs and we get bounced because of, you know, our trailer configurations, and having that communication between us. It's you know, I appreciate that, and I think that's what leads to good long-term longevity.
Yeah, like we talked about, with communication and honesty.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think those are a couple big pillars that represent our company for sure. We have no problem saying we screwed up. Like, we know we're not perfect. We're going to screw up. We're going to screw up again and again, but we're definitely going to communicate.
But that's part of the transportation business and logistics, is there's going to be screw ups because you have so many moving parts, and getting the sequencing right and assuming everything goes as planned is naive. Mm-hmm. It's never going to go as planned. And I think, and maybe you guys could have a similar mindset, but I think sometimes the short-term memory serves you best in this business, where it's easy to forget about a bad day. You learn from it, right? Mm-hmm. But you're living in the problem and not so much you're living the solution and not so much the problem. And then the next day you can sit down and say, okay, how do we do this? Let's not repeat this.
Mm-hmm. The only constant is, in the industry or in what we do, the only constant is equipment breaks.
Yeah.
Like, that's without question, that is the one constant, is equipment will fail. We just have to adapt to that. That's the rule. We have to adapt to that, and, you know, pivot where you need to pivot.
How important culturally is preventative maintenance here in your maintenance department?
Oh, it's so huge.
Mm-hmm.
If you
I
want to
mean,
speak to that.
scheduling our trucks into our shops. We're set up well where we have regional shops kind of all over our operating region that we can flow trucks through to get those PMs done. But it's critical. If we're not getting eyes on our trucks, especially the guys that park remote, you know, it's going to lead to more failures out there and create disservice to our customers. So, one, it's safety. We want our trucks safe rolling down the road. We want our drivers to be safe. And two, it's making sure that we're scheduling those ahead of time, so we're not getting like a last minute breakdown that's, you know, not getting a truck to Benton, for example. So,
well, and that driver wants to do the job well.
Absolutely.
You know, so if your equipment's failing, or, you know, things beyond their control, then that's frustrating for them as well.
And it's becoming it's becoming really challenging now too, because these, especially on the truck side, trucks, as they, you know, from to the early 2000s, pre-emissions trucks.
Sure.
Now you have these newly emission trucks, and they're the standards going up again, coming 2027, which essentially means more sensors, more D rates, more things like that. So that's become super challenging. Is these trucks become more complex? They have more sensors on them.
Yeah.
And one little sensor derates the truck, can't go over 20 miles per hour. I mean, it's making it very tough for a trucking company and the driver they take care of their truck. We do the preventative maintenance. One sensor goes, and next thing you know, the poor driver that's out there derated. He's trying to get home early because his family is going on vacation, right? It's a wild scenario that we have to manage every single day.
Yeah, regens are terrible, and we've seen it, across our asset lines, whether it be material handlers or bobcat or forklift. It sucks.
Yeah,
Get stuck in a regen. What do you think the next 5 to 10 years look like for your business in terms of the disruption? Technology, people.
I think it starts with people. One of our core values, and Bobby was elevated and became president of Stone Transport. We went through like a value assessment and really built that out. And employee pride is under safety. It's extremely high for us. And so it speaks to building the culture, putting more visibility into what we do, because our employees, not only do we have pride in them, but they have a lot of pride in what they do. And so we want to make our trucks, they should look cool, but that sticker on the door means a lot to our drivers. And I think that's just coming with communication and transparency, and then pushing our cultural values down from through the organization, through our dispatchers, speaking the same safety, transparency, and employee pride every day. I think that's a big disruptor, and it's going to lead into our brand evolution that we're working on right now, getting more social media out there, so that visibility really gets injected.
Yeah. I mean, the next 10 years, we see it as a great opportunity. Like we've diversified, we've moved into new areas, we've dug deeper with our core customers. So we see great value, and like we were talking about before, onshoring is real.
Right.
Post-COVID onshoring is very real, and we are going to have the opportunity. We have a runway for the next 15, 20, where there's just opportunity for solid logistics companies that can provide good solutions, provide capacity to move whatever it is. There's going to be a lot to do out there. We may have a little bump here and there, right? Next year,
sure.
There's that fear. There's that maybe first and second quarter, you might have a little bit of a slowdown, which is that's all by design, right? That's what the Fed's doing. Slow it down a little bit, hit a little bit of reset, but after that, it's looking pretty promising for commodities, for logistics companies, and that goes for Canadian-based, USA-based, American-based, and then also down in Mexico. I think
Sure.
There's going to be a lot of opportunity for companies to do some great things.
Yep. And then I would say we're coming up on 20 years since we did. I bought Mr. Hickey out of that, and so those capital constraints that we were smaller, had to leverage up a little bit to get that buyout done. And notwithstanding 2009, 2015, some of these challenging years, I think our ability to grow and step up to more projects, we're less constrained.
It's great. What words of advice do you have for these two? We keep going.
Oh, I don't. That's things come up and they're pretty on it.
Right.
They are, and it's their. I look at it. It's their time, and if I don't know, you could say some of the things maybe I've said over the last year or two, but they're on it with they're better at the culture than I ever was. I got better as I got older.
Sure.
But they're better on the technology.
Sure.
Than so where we're heading, they're already ahead of the game from where we've been.
I would say not what Dean has said, but more of like what he's just shown. Like basically like, I'm gonna step aside. I have trust. I want to know I need to be informed. I want to understand what's going on. But just having that trust, like, I'm gonna step aside. I'm not gonna micromanage every single thing you're gonna do. I'm gonna allow you that bandwidth to make a decision, present opportunity, and it's heard. It's not just shut down. It's not anything. It's Dean's is enthusiastic about new opportunities, new growth, whether it be within the trucking space or the logistics space or another space. Bring opportunities, and he gets, for the most part, really excited about a lot of them.
For sure.
Very excited.
Yeah, I don't want to slow these guys down, and that's important. Speed of execution.
Right,
and,
absolutely.
And we don't have a bureaucracy we have smart people that are coming up with opportunities, and they're well thought out and well executed. I can't ask for more.
Yeah, I would say the one thing that I've really taken away is the say yes to things and build the team around you so that you as a team can figure it out. I think coming from maybe more of the corporate world, risk mitigation was huge. Not that we aren't, really critical on our controls and process controls, but, stepping out there and taking bigger swings is a important piece of knowledge I've gained from Dean.
Yeah, I think I think one of the things that I've learned too is that it's great to have a team because you don't have to be the expert in anything, right? You can defer. Mm-hmm. And as long as we're working towards the same things or the same end goal and it could be executed, I don't really care how the house is built.
Mm-hmm.
You could have 6 different carpenters and have blueprints and they'll all go about building in a different way. My idea doesn't need to be right. And
that's very important. I agree 100% with that.
And nor do I have the monopoly on good ideas. And it's like, usually my first initial thought is the wrong one, but
well, that's where the team idea gets massaged to a better idea. Yeah.
Jay brought up that great point about saying yes.
Yeah.
Or no.
Right.
I mean, it's fine to say no, but the fact, I think that's one thing that helped us is we were getting answers back quick.
Right.
Somebody comes to you and they have something for you to move or a problem for you to solve, just get back to them.
Yes.
And hopefully most of the time you're saying yes, right? Otherwise your business won't grow. You're not going to have success.
Right.
And say yes even though you may not have the answer yet, but you have that hunch I can get her done, right?
Yeah.
You have to stretch that bandwidth for sure.
Yeah. I think so too. I think you have to put yourself in an uncomfortable position to grow. You have to do things you've never done before if you want something you've never had before. And for us, I think where I agree with you guys, you got to swing the bat. And I know there's economic uncertainty right now, and it's not that we're going to be spending money like assholes, but we'll allocate capital to new opportunities as we see fit to get the highest returns.
Mm-hmm. And I would say even like with our business relationship, you've probably presented us with stuff where we're sitting back going, I just say yes. We'll figure it out. Like, we'll get her done. Like, it's just, we'll figure it out. Just say yes, and we have to get it done. Like, we'll promise and perform. So you have to keep that mentality, and you have to keep stretching it, and keep stretching it, and keep stretching it.
Yeah, we did that challenging job together out of Grand Rapids. We moved, 1,000 tons, and it was a tough lane, but we made it work, and we serviced the customer, and I think that brought us closer together. It's like sometimes you work on difficult projects and you learn a lot from it, but it also reinforces that that supplier base, the vendor relationship, because there's a trust factor in it, and
absolutely,
as I was talking with them before is that sometimes I'll ask to move product and I don't ask for what the quote is on the lane. I just know it's going to get done and I know I'm going to be treated fairly, and that's why we keep coming back.
Yep.
So I appreciate your guys' time and for having us down here. It was wonderful to learn about your guys' operation, your story, and I think the one thing that we could take away from is that it starts with a truck, one oil rig, an idea, and good people around you.
A lot of mostly the good people. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Much.
Thank you.
Thanks.